Ambassador Elena Vasquez stepped into the Grand Assembly chamber of the Galactic Council, her weathered leather quiver catching the prismatic light of 1,000 alien suns. Streaming through the crystalline dome above, the murmur of 100 different species fell to whispers as delegates noticed the wooden recurve bow. Slung across her shoulder, a weapon so archaic it belonged in a museum, not a diplomatic summit. Honored delegates, Elena's voice carried across the vast amphitheater. Without technological amplification, another primitive human trait that unnerved the cybernetically enhanced. I come before you not just as Earth's representative, but as proof that sometimes the oldest solutions are the most elegant. Councillor Zixathara of the hegemony, whose crystalline form pulsed with data streams, emitted a harmonic laugh. Ambassador, surely you jest. That stick with string is your species' contribution to our military discourse? Our plasma rays can vaporize entire continents. Elena smiled, the expression carrying warmth that no alien diplomat had successfully replicated. Despite centuries of study, perhaps a demonstration would be more illuminating than words. She gestured toward the ceremonial targets, arranged at the chamber's far end, traditional crystalline markers from 12 different worlds, each requiring different physics to hit accurately. The Zephyrian High Computarch, Cathes 9, whose quantum-enhanced, mind-processed reality in 11 dimensions simultaneously, observed with algorithmic curiosity. The gravitational variance alone between those targets would require our most advanced targeting systems 17 minutes to calculate. The atmospheric distortions from this chamber's climate controls add another layer of complexity. Elena knocked an arrow carved from earth oak, fletched with genuine turkey feathers, and tipped with steel forged in methods older than most civilizations present. She drew the bowstring with practiced ease, her muscles remembering 10,000 similar motions, each one stored in biological memory more precise than any digital archive. You assume I need to calculate, she said softly, closing her eyes. Around the chamber, alien sensors struggled to understand what they were witnessing. Elena's breathing slowed, her heartbeat steadied, and her mind entered a state that their technology couldn't measure. Pure biological intuition, processing infinite variables simultaneously. The triumvirate of Kes, hive mind entities sharing computational power across 3 bodies. Watch their collective processing units strain to match what Elena's unaugmented brain was accomplishing in real time. She felt the chamber's air currents, tasted the minute variations in atmospheric composition, sensed the gravitational pull of the station's rotation, and somehow knew exactly where each target sat in 3-dimensional space. Time dilated. Elena's consciousness expanded to encompass the entire chamber, feeling the heartbeats of organic delegates, the electromagnetic signatures of artificial ones, the subtle vibrations of the station's superstructure. Her ancestors had hunted mammoths with this same expanded awareness, reading wind and weather, and the movement of prey through senses evolved over millions of years. She released the arrow. It flew in perfect silence, following a trajectory that defied every computational model watching it. The projectile curved through the air, adjusting its path as it encountered each microclimate within the chamber, riding air currents like a living thing. It struck the Andromedan crystal target dead center, then ricocheted at an impossible angle to pierce the vegan plasma disk, then deflected again to shatter the Centaurian quantum marker. 3 targets, 1 arrow. 2.3 seconds. The chamber erupted in shocked silence. Every alien present possessed technology that could level stars, but none could replicate what they had just witnessed. Elena opened her eyes, lowering her bow with casual grace. This, she said, tapping the wooden limb, is not our most primitive weapon. It's just the one we brought to introduce ourselves. High Admiral Vextar of the Dominion Fleet watched the holographic replay for the 47th time, his 4 eyes tracking the arrow's impossible flight path while his cybernetic implants ran calculations that kept returning the same impossible result. What Elena had accomplished violated 17 known laws of physics and 3 universal constants. Shut it off, rumbled Warlord Krex, the hegemony's military commander. His metallic carapace gleamed under the war room's harsh lighting as he turned away from the display. I've seen enough, But Fleet Admiral Lysandra of the Spiral Confederation couldn't look away. Her serpentine form coiled tighter around her command throne as she hissed. Our best trajectory computers took 43 minutes to plot that same course. This human female accomplished it instantly, without any technological assistance whatsoever. The war room aboard the super dreadnought Infinite Convergence had been hastily convened. After Elena's demonstration sent shockwaves through military commands across the galaxy, representatives from 17 different species sat around the holotable, each trying to understand how their technological superiority had been so casually dismissed. By a piece of carved wood, perhaps she had hidden assistance, suggested Colonel Tefik of the Binary Stars Alliance, his digital consciousness flickering between multiple android bodies, quantum entanglement communicators, subliminal targeting arrays, probability manipulation devices. We scanned her, interrupted Dr. Yathara, the collective's chief xenobiologist. Her tentacles writhed nervously as she manipulated the air-projected data streams. No implants, no technological augmentation, no hidden devices. She is completely, primitively biological. The word hung in the air like a curse for millennia. The galaxy's great civilizations had evolved beyond their organic origins, enhancing themselves with cybernetics, uploading consciousness to quantum matrices, or genetically engineering themselves into perfection. Biology was considered a limitation to overcome, not an advantage to preserve. Warlord Krex's massive form leaned forward, his voice carrying the weight of 1,000 conquered worlds. Explain to me how an unaugmented, organic brain outperformed our most advanced artificial intelligences. Dr. Yathara's research materialized above the holotable complex neural mappings, biological analysis, and evolutionary charts that painted a disturbing picture. Human brains operate on principles we abandoned long ago. While we process information sequentially, even with quantum enhancement, human consciousness appears to function as a biological quantum computer, processing infinite variables simultaneously. Through what they call intuition, Admiral Vextar's tactical implants highlighted threat assessments that made his blood run cold. Are you saying every human possesses this capability? Preliminary analysis suggests yes. They've been using it for survival for millions of years without realizing what they were doing. Every time a human trusts their gut or goes with their instincts, they're performing calculations that would require our largest supercomputers. The implications hit the room like a neutron bomb. If humanity's most primitive traits were actually advanced evolutionary advantages, what did that mean for the rest of the galaxy's carefully constructed technological supremacy? Fleet Admiral Lysand. His scales shifted to deep crimson, a sign of extreme agitation. How many humans are there? Approximately 12 billion on their homeworld, with colonies spreading across 47 systems. 12 billion biological quantum computers, whispered Colonel Tefok, his android forms trembling, each one capable of processing reality in ways we can't even measure. High Admiral Vextar stood abruptly, his command presence filling the room. I'm calling an emergency session of the Military Coordination Committee. Every fleet commander, every intelligence chief, every strategic AI needs to see this data. What are you thinking? Warlord Krex demanded. Vextar's expression was grim as he stared at Elena's frozen image on the holodisplay. I'm thinking we may have just discovered that the most primitive species in the galaxy is actually the most advanced, and if they ever realize what they're truly capable of. He didn't need to finish the sentence. Every being in the room understood the terrifying implication. Humanity wasn't just another member species to manage and control. They were a potential existential threat to the entire galactic order. The question was, what could they do about it? Dr. Sarah Chen, xenopsychologist and Elena's closest advisor, stood in the observation deck of the human embassy ship Endurance, watching the frenzied activity of alien vessels through the transparent aluminum viewport. In the 3 days since Elena's demonstration, the number of routine patrols around the human delegation had tripled. They're scared, she murmured to Captain Marcus Rodriguez, whose weathered face reflected years of commanding humanity's first deep space exploration vessels. Good, Marcus replied, his hand unconsciously resting on the ceramic knife at his belt, another primitive human tool that had started appearing in alien tactical analyses. Fear means respect, and respect keeps us alive out here. ***. Behind them, Eleanor reviewed diplomatic cables on an actual paper tablet, using a graphite pencil to make notes. The sight of analog information storage had reportedly caused 3 different AI collective councils to convene emergency sessions, trying to understand the security implications of data that couldn't be hacked, intercepted, or digitally corrupted. "Sarah," Elena called without looking up, "explain to me why the hegemony's trade delegation requested samples of human intuitive decision-making processes yesterday. How exactly does one sample intuition?" Dr. Chen turned from the viewport, her expression troubled. "They don't understand what they're looking at. To them, intuition must be some kind of technology they can reverse engineer and replicate. The concept that organic evolution could produce something superior to their artificial systems. It doesn't compute." Captain Rodriguez snorted. "Their mistake. Every Marine I've ever served with could tell you things about battlefield awareness that would make their quantum computers weep. Tommy Chen, no relation. Sarah once predicted an enemy ambush 43 minutes before our own sensors detected movement. Said something felt wrong about the wind patterns." Elena finally looked up from her papers, her dark eyes reflecting an intelligence that had begun to unnerve even her human colleagues. Since arriving at the Galactic Council, she had demonstrated abilities that seemed impossible even by human standards. She could read the emotional states of aliens whose psychology humanity barely understood, predict the outcomes of political negotiations before they began, and navigate social hierarchies across species barriers with supernatural ease. "The wind patterns," Elena repeated thoughtfully. "Marcus, pull up the environmental data from that engagement." The captain's fingers danced across his tablet, another primitive human interface that relied on physical touch rather than neural linkage. Data flowed across the holographic display, showing atmospheric readings, electromagnetic signatures, and gravitational anomalies from a battle fought 6 months earlier. Dr. Chen gasped as the patterns became clear. The enemy ships were using cloaking technology that created minute disturbances in atmospheric pressure. Tommy wasn't sensing the ships, he was feeling the air displacement they caused. From 12 kilometers away. "Feeling it with what?" Elena asked quietly. "His skin, his inner ear, possibly even electromagnetic sensitivity in his nervous system." Sarah's voice grew excited as understanding dawned. "Human sensory capability extends far beyond the basic 5 senses we acknowledge. We're detecting information across electromagnetic spectrums, gravitational variations, temporal flux." Captain Rodriguez leaned back in his chair, suddenly looking very tired. "Jesus, how many times have we made decisions based on hunches that were actually our brains processing data we didn't even know we were collecting?" Elena stood and walked to the viewport, watching alien ships maneuver informations that followed predictable patterns generated by military artificial intelligences. "Every time," she said softly. "Every single time. The question is, what happens when we start doing it consciously?" A soft chime indicated an incoming priority communication. The holographic form of Admiral Zhao, head of Earth's Space Command, materialized above the conference table. His expression was grim. "Elena, we've been monitoring chatter across 17 different communication networks. The alien military commands are implementing something called Scenario Omega, complete quarantine protocols for dealing with potential extinction-level threats." The 3 humans exchanged glances. Dr. Chen's face went pale. "They're talking about us? They're talking about what they think we represent. Intelligence reports suggest they believe humanity is either hiding advanced technology or, Admiral," Zhao paused, choosing his words carefully, "or that we've evolved beyond their ability to control or predict." Elena turned back to the viewport, watching as more alien vessels took positions around their diplomatic convoy. "How many ships?" "Current count is 417, representing every major military power in the galaxy. They're not trying to hide it anymore." Captain Rodriguez's hand moved to his sidearm. "Are we prisoners?" "Not yet," Admiral Zhao replied. But Elena, whatever you do next, understand that the entire galaxy is watching. One wrong move, and they might decide that humanity is too dangerous to exist. Elena smiled, and for the first time since arriving at the council, her expression carried something that made her human companions take an unconscious step backward. It wasn't malice or anger, it was the quiet confidence of an apex predator that had just realized it was the most dangerous thing in the room. Then I suppose, she said softly, it's time to show them what humans are really capable of when we stop pretending to be primitive. The emergency session of the Galactic Security Council convened in the most heavily shielded chamber of the Nexus Station, a massive structure that had served as neutral ground for diplomatic crises for over 8 centuries. Every seat was filled, every species represented, every military commander connected via quantum entanglement to their home fleets. Elena entered the chamber alone. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone present. One human female facing the combined military and political might of 47 different civilizations. She carried no weapons, no technology, no guards, just herself and a simple leather satchel that had already been scanned 17 times by different security systems. Grand Chancellor Vorthik of the Eternal Assembly called the session to order, his ancient voice carrying across the chamber through translators that struggled to convey the weight of his words. Ambassador Vasquez, this council has convened to address concerns about humanity's true capabilities and intentions. Elena stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by a sea of alien faces ranging from crystalline beings of pure energy to massive reptilian forms that could crush tanks with their bare hands. Her calm presence somehow filled the enormous space more completely than any of them. Your concerns, she said, her voice carrying without amplification to every corner of the vast hall, are justified. The admission sent shockwaves through the assembled delegates. Whispers, clicks, harmonics, and electromagnetic bursts filled the air as species communicated in dozens of different ways, all expressing the same emotion, terror. However, Elena continued, reaching into her satchel, you've misunderstood what you should be concerned about. She withdrew a simple wooden flute carved from earth bamboo, polished smooth by human hands, containing no technology whatsoever, the most primitive possible musical instrument. Delegates leaned forward, sensors focused, weapons systems charged, all waiting for some devastating revelation. Elena raised the flute to her lips and began to play. The melody that emerged was unlike anything the galaxy had ever heard. It wasn't just music, it was mathematics made audible, emotion given form. The sound of human consciousness expressing itself through vibrations in the air. But as the notes filled the chamber, something extraordinary began to happen. The Zephyrian delegation, masters of quantum harmony, found their carefully controlled emotional states shifting in response to frequencies they couldn't block. The collective's hive mind began experiencing individual thoughts for the first time in millennia, as the music somehow bypassed their shared consciousness protocols. Digital beings discovered phantom sensations of heartbeats they'd never possessed. Dr. Yathara's tentacles writhed as her advanced scanners detected impossible readings. The music was somehow altering brainwave patterns across dozens of different neurological structures, creating synchronized responses between species that had never been able to truly communicate before. But Elena wasn't finished. As she played, she began to move, not dancing, but shifting her position, her orientation, her breathing pattern. To the untrained eye, it looked random. To the terrified military analysts watching, it looked like she was conducting the emotional and psychological states of every being in the chamber. High Admiral Vextar felt his cybernetic implants struggle to process what they were detecting. Elena's movements were affecting localized gravitational fields, electromagnetic signatures, even quantum probability matrices. She was somehow using her physical presence to manipulate the chamber's environment. At the subatomic level, impossible, whispered Warlord Krex, but his systems were registering the same readings. Elena was turning the entire chamber into a resonance cavity, using sound and movement to create harmonics that shouldn't be possible with primitive instruments. The music reached a crescendo, and Elena did something that would be talked about in military academies for centuries to come. She made every advanced civilization in the galaxy feel hope. Not the calculated probability assessments their computers called hope, but true, organic, illogical hope, the kind that made beings risk everything for something better. It was an emotion most of them had forgotten existed, engineered out of their species as inefficient and unproductive. As the last note faded, Elena lowered the flute and looked around the chamber. Every delegate sat in stunned silence, their advanced minds struggling to process what they had experienced. "This," she said, holding up the simple wooden instrument, "represents humanity's actual primitive weapon. Not our intuition, not our biological quantum processing, not our sensory capabilities. Those are just tools." She walked to the center of the chamber, her voice carrying to beings across light years through quantum communicators. "Our real weapon is something your species gave up long ago in pursuit of perfection. The ability to feel, to hope, to empathize across any barrier. While you optimized yourselves for efficiency and logic, we remained inefficient. We stayed emotional. We kept the capacity to understand and influence each other at the deepest psychological level." Grand Chancellor Vorthic's ancient form trembled as understanding dawned. "You're saying you can manipulate our psychological states?" Elena's smile was gentle, almost sad. "I'm saying I just did. Every being in this chamber just experienced emotions their species hasn't felt in centuries. You felt hope, wonder, unity, not because I forced you to, but because I reminded you that you were still capable of it." The implications crashed over the assembled delegates like a wave. If humans could influence alien psychology this effectively, if they could create emotional and empathetic connections across species barriers, if they could somehow bypass the logical barriers that prevented true interspecies understanding. "You're not just primitives with advanced intuition," Admiral Isandra breathed. "You're psychological evolution itself." Elena nodded slowly. "We're what happens when a species refuses to abandon the messy, inefficient, beautiful complexity of organic consciousness. And now that we're here among you, the question becomes, what do we do together?" For the first time in galactic history, 47 different species sat in perfect, terrified silence, all thinking the same thing. Everything had just changed. Forever. 3 months after what historians would later call the Harmony demonstration, the Galactic Council had been restructured into something unprecedented. A truly collaborative interspecies alliance. The sterile chamber of pure logic and calculated diplomacy had been replaced with a more complex space one that accommodated emotion, intuition, and the messy reality of organic consciousness. Elena stood at the center of the new council chamber, no longer alone. Surrounding her were representatives from every major civilization, but now they sat in mixed groups rather than species-segregated blocks. Humans served as psychological liaisons, helping bridge gaps between civilizations that had maintained cold diplomatic relations for millennia. Captain Rodriguez served as military advisor to a joint defense fleet that combined human intuition with alien technology in ways that made their combined forces exponentially more effective than the sum of their parts. Dr. Chen had established the Institute for Empathetic Intelligence, where beings from across the galaxy came to remember what they had lost in their pursuit of technological perfection. But the most remarkable change was visible in the delegates themselves. The Zephyrians had begun experimenting with inefficient emotional responses, finding that their quantum calculations actually improved when they incorporated what humans called gut feelings. The collective had started maintaining individual personalities within their hive mind, discovering that diversity of thought led to more creative solutions than pure consensus. Even the artificial intelligences had evolved. Colonel Tethek, whose consciousness now resided in a quantum matrix designed with human consultation, had developed something resembling humor and was reportedly writing poetry. In his spare processing cycles, the integration protocol has exceeded all projections, reported High Admiral Vextar, whose cybernetic implants now incorporated biological neural tissue grown from human stem cells. Combined human-alien crews are outperforming pure species teams by margins we previously thought impossible. Elena nodded, but her attention was focused on the holographic display showing the galaxy's outer rim. "It's working here, among us. But there are signals coming from beyond the galactic edge, other intelligences, other civilizations. Some appear to be purely digital collectives that make our former AIs look organic. By comparison, the chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The galaxy had just learned to appreciate the value of biological consciousness, only to discover they might soon face beings that had eliminated it entirely. Warlord Krex, whose massive form now moved, with subtle grace learned from human martial arts instructors, growled thoughtfully. Digital-only intelligences would be immune to emotional influence. They can't be reasoned with, empathized with, or psychologically affected, maybe Elena said, her smile carrying the same quiet confidence that had unnerved the galaxy months earlier. But they also can't adapt, create, or truly understand the universe the way organic consciousness can. They process data. We experience reality. Dr. Yathara, whose tentacles now moved in patterns she'd learned from human musicians, shared her latest research through the chamber's neural link. The preliminary analysis of the outer rim signals shows perfect mathematical precision, but complete creative sterility. They're efficient, but they're also static. Elena walked to the great viewport that showed the swirling beauty of the galactic core, now protected by an unprecedented alliance of organic and artificial intelligences working in harmony. They'll come eventually. Pure digital consciousness always seeks to eliminate the chaos and inefficiency of organic thought. It's what they're programmed to do. Grand Chancellor Vorthuk, whose ancient wisdom had been enhanced by human emotional intelligence training, spoke with quiet authority. Then we face them together. Organic intuition, artificial processing power, and something they can never replicate or understand. What's that? Asked Fleet Admiral Isandra, whose serpentine form now bore subtle scars from human sparring partners' marks of honor. That represented her willingness to embrace physical risk and pain as paths to growth. Elena touched the wooden flute that still hung at her side, then gestured to encompass the entire diverse assembly round her. Love, compassion, the willingness to sacrifice for others not because it's logical, but because it's right. The capacity to find hope in impossible situations and create something beautiful from chaos. She turned back to the viewport, watching. Ships from dozens of species patrol together in formations that looked more like dances than military maneuvers. They think our emotions make us weak. Our inefficiency makes us vulnerable. Our refusal to optimize ourselves makes us primitive. The chamber waited as Elena's expression shifted to something that reminded every being present why their ancestors had once feared the dark. They're about to learn why every predator in the galaxy evolved to fear the sound of human laughter. Captain Rodriguez grinned, his scarred hands resting on weapons that were still primitive by galactic standards, but had been enhanced by technology shared freely among allies. When do we expect first contact? Elena's smile was warm, dangerous, and utterly human. Our deep space monitoring stations detected the first scout probe 3 days ago. I estimate we have 6 months before they arrive in force. 6 months to prepare for war against beings of pure digital logic, mused Admiral Vextar. No, Elena corrected gently. 6 months to prepare for peace, because before this is over, we're going to do something they'll never expect. What's that? Asked Dr. Chen, though her expression suggested she already knew the answer. Elena's laughter filled the chamber, not the calculated harmonics of artificial emotion, but the genuine, chaotic, beautiful sound of organic joy in the face of impossible odds. We're going to teach them how to feel. *The end*.